We should say, TaleWorlds, please don't ban us for criticising your game.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is only a video pointing out the critique and just a little
We
bit of the flaws.
apologize in advance.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
apologize.
Put this at the start, French.
Alright, so hello everyone. I'm glad actually most of you could make it. So before we begin, I just wanted to go over like the topics that we're going to discuss, along with some basic rules in regards to this podcast. Well, rules are maybe a little bit harsh, but as this is being recorded, I think the following should be taken into account. So every one of you, obviously here in the channel, is entitled to their own opinion. We're all friends here, so let's just have a nice conversation about Bannerlord, and we're going to try to avoid swearing as much as possible, and keep in mind that, again, your opinion could be shared by dozens of people out there, dozens of players out there, and you're pretty much their voice when it comes to being here in this session. So yeah, try not to rudely interrupt one another. You guys will be doing most of the talking. I'll be throwing topics at you. I took the liberty of going through the TaleWorlds, like forums and such, for inspiration. So I'm gonna keep you guys busy, and I'll be sort of like the moderator, and keeping the conversation going as long as possible, or until we reach the end of our session, which should be around 9 PM BST, as I earlier mentioned. So if you need to leave prior to that, Domi, just let us know.
I will.
And then we just continue the conversation. If this proves to be fun, and yeah, a nice conversation with some proper arguments and such, I might do another one, for those that are interested, of course. And yeah, if everyone's cool with that, yeah?
Yeah, great.
Yes.
Alrighty, then let's go over everyone that's here. So we got some 5th members. We got Domi,
Hello.
we got Kev,
Hello.
and we got Musketeer.
Hello.
And then we got myself as well, and we got a special guest, which is a Chatman.
Hello there.
So Chatman having his own YouTube channel, as well as countless of videos on Mount and Blade. So I tried to spice it up a little bit when it comes to this podcast, to allow both like positive as well as like positive remarks, as well as like critique when it comes to this game. But most of the things that I've found when it comes to this game are kind of like towards the critique side, so yeah, but still, I try to spice it up, you'll see. So I think first and foremost, I'd like to hear from each one of you what you think about the game as a whole in its like current state, because you know it's early access. That's what they announced it as, that's what they released it as. So in its current state, what do you guys think about the game? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you have mixed feelings and so on? And maybe give a little bit of a brief like argument or backstory about it. Why do you feel like the way that you do? Feel free to decide which one's going to start among you.
I volunteer, Domi.
Why would you do that? Okay. Right. I personally think Bannerlord so far to me seems like pretty much a reskin of Warband. There's not that many new. I can't speak from single player standpoint, but when I did play that did seem quite almost identical in the first bit, when you go into the hideout and doing the same thing with a merchant, or maybe a renamed merchant. So that felt very the same, and I didn't have the interest to carry on playing past that, because that felt identical to the 100 times that I played native single player. Then multiplayer, I think they lost a lot of the charm from the Warband melee system. I think that mainly comes due to the fact that a lot of the things in the Warband melee system aren't on purpose. They were more accidents or bugs that then added to the interest and skill cap, if you will, of the melee system, which I don't feel is in Bannerlord in the same way. It's a much more linear system. That's my main view.
Alrighty.
I kind of agree on Domi with the single player being pretty much the same as in the previous Mount and Blade. It looks the same, it plays the same, it just has new names, and yeah, same factions with new names pretty much. As for the multiplayer, I think Yeah, because it's a bit unbalanced at the moment, it's not a very fun to play. But other than that, it's just lacking a lot of players to make it more fun.
I kind of agree. Like, I think everyone agrees single player is pretty much the same as Warband. I mean, there's a few small, the sort of clan features a bit nice, but apart from that, it's virtually the same. And I mean, personally, I find it pretty boring anyway. So I don't play it very much. But the multiplayer is a bit. I don't know. I think I disagree with some people because I don't think it's that unbalanced. I think there's a few, changing the value of different units by like 10 or 20 gold, I think would probably fix it, because you just have to get used to playing the factions the way that they're kind of meant to be played, because everyone can do heavy infantry and cavalry, but like Azerai, for example, you all hate that, but it's got some really good light units. So if you were sort of playing a bit more, in a team, I think you'd probably be fairly balanced against some other factions. And I like the multiplayer overall because the combat feels a bit more like weighty than Mount and Blade Warband. Comparing it to that, just because Warband felt a bit arcadey, I guess, whereas this feels a bit more nuanced, I suppose you could say.
Mm-hmm. Chapman, what would you like to add to that?
Well, generally speaking, I've enjoyed playing multiplayer quite a bit. Because I didn't really play the original hardly at all. I don't really sort of have a frame of reference to compare it to Warband. So most of that kind of sort of reference would come from other players and their experiences of playing the game. I agree with what you said about the combat feels weightier. So if you swing, with a longer swing and make contact, then the damage is more significant. And so there feels, like you're saying, a little bit more nuance there. Generally speaking, I would say there are balance issues with certain aspects of the game. That obviously it's still in early access, so there's still plenty to work out. But I think also to a certain degree, it kind of suffers from giving the community what they want, which is essentially we want Mount and Blade Warband just looking prettier, which is always going to be the danger. And so there's always going to be that comparison between Warband, and I know there are people who play Warband and prefer the combat in Warband compared to Bannerlord. Now, obviously, it could be because, as Domi was saying, there were certain little bugs in there, certain little features that were never intended, and so add to the verisimilitude of the combat experience. They just aren't present in Bannerlord at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, if we're comparing like combat, specifically the melee, then I feel that the combat in Warband is more precise. You kind of know what's happening, whereas because Bannerlords there's a bit more detail to it. Like the length of the swing. I know swing speed is a thing in Warband as well, but like if you're really close to someone, you can see the animation stops when you try and hit them, and you do barely any damage. But if you're at the right length and you get it just right, then you do the maximum damage for that weapon. So it's like like I say, there's more to it. But then if you're playing competitively, it can be frustrating because you've got to you've almost got to play in a 3D space to be able to get it all perfectly right every time, like you would normally be able to do in Warband.
Yeah, I think in general, Bannerlord has its own things for the combat, as you said. It's more about the range that you're attacking people from, and I do agree that you have more weight behind the attacks. The sound's better, and the animations match what's happening when you are too close. But then I think currently, when you've got two people that can block in Bannerlord, the fights are very monotonous and there's not much outplaying you can do. Whereas in native, it's or warband, whatever you want to call it, there's more things you can do, like with the manipulation of your model that they've sort of removed from Bannerlord, to not fully, but they've removed a large manipulation of the model in Bannerlord to native that just gave you a bit more freedom to beat someone if you were better than them. But now it seems in Bannerlord, if you've got 2 good players, a fight's going to last quite a long time. Obviously we won't know until people become really, really good at the game, but I could see that being a thing.
Yeah,
Unless things have changed.
I'd say probably I would say also the skill ceiling's probably a bit lower because of what you've said, like because it, like you say, the animations match what's happening quite closely, which is nice from a I'd say I'm pretty mediocre, pretty normal player. It's nice from my perspective because I can see what's going on. But in Warband, because the animations are so fast and so buggy sometimes, it's people like yourself that kind of are pretty good at it, you know what's happening, whereas I've got no clue. I'm like looking at you like, what's this guy doing? He's just hit me and I didn't even see it.
Yeah, they've gone for it's more realistic.
Yeah.
And it's removed the arcadiness of native, which made it, well, it added skill to it. But so it depends what you like, really.
Yeah.
It's more comparable to Mordhau in the way it plays. It's not exactly the same, but I think it's a mixture of Warband melee and Mordhau melee in the way it works. If anyone's played Mordhau, that is.
Yeah, there's a lot of topics about that on the thread as well when it comes to like the combat system. There's a lot of people typing the same over and over again because that's only what you find nowadays on the threads, like desperate appeals for changes towards TaleWorlds, especially when it comes to the combat system. There's many people that, like you said, Domi, prefer the arcade-esque Warband style of combat. You can't blame them for being a little bit disappointed in the changes that the TaleWorlds developers made to make it more realistic, right?
The problem is with that is that when you go from one game to another, there needs to be some kind of evolution of the game. And if they keep winding it back into Warband, the game's not going to evolve, and the gameplay and the meta is never going to evolve in any kind of serious way. So it's going to be automatically hampered by the fact that they keep trying to sort of tie it back to Warband.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's I understand where they're coming from, but it can be a slippery slope to go down.
I suppose being a bit sort of blunt about it, if you like playing Warband, then you should play Warband, really.
Which is clearly what some people do. Or I think majority of competitive or multiplayer players will still play Warband over.
Yeah, that's fine, because like Chapman was saying, if you have the same game, then what's the point? What's the point in spending 8 years making a new game if it's just going to be the same as the old one, but looking a bit prettier?
Yeah. Pretty much don't play a game you don't like.
Yeah, basically. Stop moaning about it, go play something else.
Alrighty.
I think that's a big problem, is the people's love for Warband was so great. And even everything about it, a game doesn't last that long if it isn't good. So everyone wants a game as good as that, and it's going to be hard for them to ever replicate something as good as that. And I don't think they ever will replicate something that will be as successful for as long.
Well, there are certain aspects that helped its success along, and obviously I think we'll end up talking about those later on. Certain aspects of the game mechanics that increase the longevity and the appeal of the game. So some things that are currently missing in Bannerlord. So
yeah. So we've talked about the combat system a little bit. When it comes to the class system that Bannerlord uses, with the pre-made classes and items that you can pick, do you guys think it's balanced? Do you think there's enough variety in the equipment? And compared to the Warband system of picking your class and your loadout, do you like it? Do you dislike it? What do you think about it?
I like it because in Warband it was basically a case of as you get more money in a siege, if you kill people, you get more money. Eventually, everyone has the same equipment because you just buy the best thing. Whereas if you've got defined classes, then it forces you to be more versatile rather than just being good at one thing and everyone having the same thing. If you see what I mean, if you
have to adapt.
Yeah, because if you can't, you can take a knight once, and then after that you've got to take something else. So if you're good at cavalry, then you also need to be good at something else. Otherwise, you're going to get one life, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's more streamlined as a system, so it's less confusing to like a player just coming in when there's just random monetary values placed on all of these items, and there's just damages on them all of the different stats on the weapon. This is in Warband. It's quite confusing of what's going on. It's much more streamlined when they say in Bannerlord, improved armor or mace, extra javelins. It's what you're getting rather than some weird barbed arrows that then says, oh yes, this does more damage. It's easier if you're a new player.
It's easier for you to predict as well.
Yeah.
If you're a new player, then you, like you said, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, but I think when they remove that,
the similarities in the appearance as well. So when you see a certain type of army, you can immediately identify, he's one of those. So he's going to have this. He's going to have some good armor. I need to watch myself.
Yeah, and also as well, I think the fact that the different factions have slightly different variations on the classes is really nice as well, because in other games, I can't name any specific ones, but I know that in some other games, you might have different factions, but virtually all the classes will virtually be identical, just a different skin. Whereas in this, every faction looks completely different. Their
and
units,
if you're on a weaker faction than the others, because obviously some factions have better archers, some factions have better warriors, all that kind of stuff, and so that, I think, if anything, forces adaptation.
yeah, because
it's going to be a good thing.
Because I mean, like I was saying earlier, like I know people say that it's unbalanced, but it is unbalanced if you're good at one particular class. Because if you're good at one particular class and there's a few factions that have a good unit for that class, then great for you. But then if you go in a faction where they use, they've got another class that's good, then you're going to find it difficult, which is frustrating for some people, but it's quite fun.
That ties into the, can you adapt your play style to match this new class? So in other words, you just end up playing classes you've never played before.
Yeah.
So I agree on the opinions that you guys just mentioned, but I think they dropped the ball on choosing what gear and equipment that the classes have right now. Because, for example, there's archers that have a stronger melee weapon as well as some infantry classes have. Just an example. There are archers with more armor than infantry classes. And even with the better melee weapon and better armor, they also move faster.
I don't know. I mean, if you want to say the Vlandian crossbowman, the heavy crossbowman, I can't remember what he's called, sharpshooter. I mean, I think that should cost a bit more money, because the other good archers on the other factions cost 160 gold, and that would only cost 140. And it's basically a heavy infantry unit with a crossbow, so that's a bit overpowered. But it is really slow, and then the same with all the other archers, they're pretty slow if you take heavy armor.
Yeah.
If you take, for example, the Empire's Palatine Guard, they have a ton of armor, they have a really strong two-handed melee weapon, and of course they can shoot. They have a good bow as well. So it's pretty much useless to take another unit when you play the Empire.
Not necessarily, because the glaive. I think it's the glaive for Empire, isn't it? No, it's an Avlion. Yeah, I mean, it's all right, but it is a pretty slow weapon. So if someone comes at you with a sword and a shield, one-on-one, as soon as they get close to you, you're going to struggle because you can't attack as fast as they can.
They have a one-handed sword as well.
I think if I'm not mistaken, Kev is also pointing out on the strengths of the units regardless of the amount of money they cost, because in Warband you had to pay for each weapon that you bought, right? For your class. And in this game you automatically have the weapons regardless of what price you buy the class has. Right? And some classes have really good weapons included in their loadout, which people will naturally take because they're really good weapons. For classes that are in Warband maybe don't have those weapons at their disposal.
Maybe what they should do is, you can choose like 2 or 3 different things for your 2 slots. Maybe make some of them cost gold, or all of them cost a bit of gold. So like a Manavlion could cost like 10 gold. So immediately the unit's a little bit more expensive, and it means you maybe can't take it twice, you can only take it once.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice idea. You will have a standard equipment set, and if you wanted the bonus weapon or shield, then it should cost a little bit extra.
Yeah, because at the moment it's very much you just pick what's best. There's clear bests in the class.
Yeah.
So if the bests were costing more, then there'd be more variety in what people take.
Yeah, agreed.
And then talking about because in multiplayer, you, as well as in single player, your character has like skill requirements, right? Riding, agility, shooting a bow, you name it. Those same character traits are also in multiplayer, but for the units that they have right now, which this is another thread I found, by the way, which talked about the skill requirements. So I'm just going to read it. In multiplayer as it stands now, you can pick up bow and arrows as infantry and ride horses when you are a class that obviously shouldn't be able to ride horses. Should TaleWorlds apply the same system like in Warband, so that not every class can pick up any weapons or use horses, like skill requirements, like implement those properly in multiplayer?
Because of the preponderance, it says here using a big word, of cavalry in multiplayer games, I would say yes, that would be good. Because, I mean, you think about it from a realistic point of view, you pick up a weapon you never used before, you're not going to be very good with it.
Yeah.
And so if there was a certain level of limitation, so you want to pick up that weapon, then you've got to have a certain level of skill to be able to do it. For those, I mean, obviously over the course of time there will be a point where everybody will have enough skill to do it, but obviously early on in the game it just means, the trouble is with doing it that way, it means that the players that are new to the game are going to be at an instant disadvantage.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you gain over time, like levels. It could just be, like each class. So, heavy infantry, for example, will be really good at using a shield and really good at using single-handed weapons, which means they'll be faster with single-handed weapons and they'll be faster at blocking with a shield, and so on and so on. But then, I wouldn't say you should have locks on what you can do, because realistically, in medieval times, I think anyone could pick up a 2-handed weapon and start swinging it about. But if I was a heavy infantry person, I could pick up a 2-handed weapon, but I wouldn't necessarily be any good at using it. So you could, a bit like, well, exactly the same as it works in single player. If you're not very skilled with a weapon, you do less damage, it's slower, etc., etc. All they need to do is translate that into multiplayer. So it means if I wanted to pick up a glaive off the ground, I can do that, but it's not advisable because I'm not going to be any good at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is the case already, because I know that was the case in native.
It's not, but it doesn't. If it is, it's not as.
It's not prominent.
Because a peasant can pick up any weapon, and suddenly he's like the same class with a little less armor.
Yeah. Because that system was in, what's it called? Napoleonic Wars as well.
Yeah.
Like picking up weapons and such. Like different classes they were just single player characters with all their proficiencies and everything. It's just you couldn't see them. So maybe that is in this game as well, but it doesn't seem very prominent.
No.
It's not immediately obvious, no.
Yeah.
Because then that would, I suppose it does take away a little bit of the flexibility, but it also means, like you say, kind of at the end of a round, like we've had when we've played before, at the end of a round, everyone's running around on horses, cutting people in half with massive axes because they've picked them up off the ground. Which, if they're kind of going for the realism angle, which is, I think is it's a reasonable sort of
It's a difficult
way to
balance
go.
between fun and realism.
Yeah, but if they are going towards realism, then realistically, not everyone can ride a horse or shoot a bow.
True.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Kev?
Yeah, I do think the weapons and gear should not be locked, but less effective when you're not the right class to use them. That means it could be funny, like when you don't have the riding skill, that you have a chance to fall off, for example, when you try to strike someone.
You would go for like penalties. when
Yeah,
the
it
class-
would give a failure chance.
The horse is more likely to stumble.
Yeah.
It would make funny moments as well, I think.
Yeah,
Other than locking out complete use of weapons that are lying on the ground. You could also have different kind of shields with different shield skill requirements. Like some classes could be better with wooden shields than metal shields. And then give them a penalty as well, of course.
I mean, you can add penalties and chances, but it depends what stance they want to go for. For general casual player, it wouldn't make much difference. But if you're playing competitively between clans, I don't think RNG is ever a good thing in a competitive, environment. If randomly people can start falling off horses, it's like, well, this is pure chance. That was very unlucky in this moment.
The option of turning that off.
Yeah, you'd need to if you're going for a competitive standpoint, because that could ruin matches and it could make no play. If there was a chance of you falling off your horse, you're running around the back streets and you fall off, it makes no difference. You're running around and then you're in between 4 units when you're going for a charge, when your men are going in, then you die, and that's just a random chance there that you can't predict.
Well, then you pretty much chose to use the horse that you cannot ride, for example.
Oh yeah, you would have. I don't think RNG in competitive scenarios usually works.
Okay, yeah, I get your point.
Alright, so you have the skirmish mode, which I think we can consider that to be a competitive mode right now, right? Despite it being played casually as well, but it's a more or less competitive mode. You got 6 players versus 6 players, right? Now, what are your thoughts on? This is again something I read off a thread. What are your thoughts on further emphasizing this mode to be a competitive mode by retuning classes and have the spawn and gold rebalance, or battle it with 1 life along with earnable ranks, so to allow proper matchmaking? This was written by Dame or Go. He came up with the idea of sub ranks and such within each division. So it's pretty much further emphasizing the fact that this is a competitive mode. And again, I think that would to continue your subject from earlier on, the stumble, the luck factor or RNG factor, that you don't want to have that in that type of game mode then. But what would you guys think about having that being further emphasized in that way that he writes it? Yeah.
My concern is balance.
Yeah.
That's obviously going to be the most difficult thing to do there, but I mean, it definitely has a possibility, because what you're doing is you're just giving options to people. Whether they choose to take it or not is up to them.
So,
I believe.
yeah.
I think it's a good idea, because that was made in Warband and in Napoleonic Wars recently. It was made where they a community made matchmaking system with that exact, so it matched you with people, and then you'd get points depending on how you did or how your team did, and then there was ranks as well.
Thing
I
is,
don't know if everyone knows about that, but that was a thing.
No, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it needs to be that complex, because that kind of complexity is what you have in a tournament, which is that's like 1% of players will be involved in that, and then 99% of players won't even know it's happening. So if you wanted kind of because you've got competitive, and then there's competitive, which you've got casual competitive and proper competitive.
Yeah.
And most people playing competitive will be casual competitive. So just off the top of my head, what you could do is have it match people with similar KD ratios, and that could be done, behind the scenes if you like. You don't need to see any interface with a list of, your rank and things. It's just done for you. So in theory, it will automatically put you with people with similar KDs, and it can change over time then, without you having to do anything, without any pop-ups. It just happens.
Yeah.
Let me add this thread then. This is from Canton. I quote him: "As it stands, multiplayer in Bannerlord isn't doing too hot. Too long to read, because he had a whole explanation going on. Skirmish mode is hostile towards new players, and battle mode would offer public players the best shot at a competitive game, which they can still enjoy."
I mean, I agree that there's a big problem that there's no battle mode, or a mode that of custom servers. It's very limited in what you can do at the moment. There's siege, there's skirmish, there's like a commander battle variant, I think, and then there's team deathmatch,
yeah.
which is, I don't know, are they community made? I don't know exactly what they are, but I don't think there's enough variety in what you can do yet. Or you at least need the battle mode, which was the best mode of, well, Warband, and in general it was the best mode that everyone played.
And I guess that should be possible when we get the option to have private service, custom service. People can enable something like a battle mode. For the skirmish, I do think it's the best game mode for competitive, because you will have not the clusters like in Siege. You can just get shot from every random direction because there is 2 big teams. And in Skirmish you have more options to play as a team with fewer friends.
Focused.
Yeah. I think it's more competitive than the other game modes. And the battle mode would be extremely doing well.
I suppose it kind of boils down to the fact that a lot of these problems are generated because there aren't enough people playing the game. Because if, matchmaking's fine, and I'm sure it's something they could implement fairly easily, but it's not going to make a difference if there's only 20 people looking for a game. Because, we play with the same probably 100 people, from what I can see in Skirmish. So regardless of if you've got a matchmaking mode or not, it's not going to be able to matchmake you with anyone of the same skill level, because you get what you get. Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah, exactly. And we also ran into the situation that we kept fighting the same opponents, which are better or worse than us, and so it doesn't really affect the results. We win or we lose against the same people.
Yeah.
So you guys are all in agreement that one of the main issues is the fact that there's no custom service yet. There's no...
Yeah, that's a big thing.
That's a big thing.
Because, you have a look at the likes of Warband and Napoleonic Wars. The fact that it's still played every single day, and 90% of what's played every single day is on private servers or, third-party servers. And that's what's helped the longevity of this game and the community. It's the fact that people have these servers that they can build and run themselves, run their events, do whatever they want to do. And because it's lacking that option right now, it means that there are certain other annoyances, like if you do matchmaking and you go in for a siege, you get one game of a siege and then you get kicked out and you've got to matchmake again. You can't just sit on a siege server and just play round after round after round of siege like you can on mini siege or something like that. And I think that kind of frustrates people because, if you've got a good siege going, then maybe, you can mix it up and randomize the teams or something once every 3 rounds, something along those lines. But it's the fact that it kicks you out after every single game, and then you have to wait for the matchmaking to find you another match, which it may or may not do. I think that server browsing is the best option. And obviously, with respect to the private servers, the community is the lifeblood of any game. And unless you give them the tools they need to ensure the support for the game, then the game is just going to die. And it will miss that opportunity, that window of opportunity that is open.
Yeah.
May not open again.
You're referring to the release of the modding tools then, as well?
Well, modding tools and private servers. Because at the end of the day, everything that we see from Warband and Mount and Blade and Napoleonic Wars shows that private servers have been the backbone of the continuation of the success and popularity of that game.
Nothing beats the creativity of the players.
Yeah. And the thing is, at the end of the day, you don't have to give them every single tool. Just give them something so they can create things, do what they want, have a silly time on the server, build maps, whatever they want to do. But unless you give them the tools to do it, it means that eventually they'll lose interest in the game. And once that interest is lost, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to get it back.
That's very evident though. Like when at the moment, it's comparable to a new Call of Duty game. You've got your matchmakings, you've got your few game modes, and they will always die within 4 months, and then it only takes a whole new release of a new game, new content, that people play it again. And that's without community servers. It's going to be like that. Obviously, they're not going to release one every year, so they need community servers.
It's apparent from the frustration as well on the forums. It's cool that we already stumbled upon this topic and this vital aspect of the game. I'm just gonna read this next message then, which I was gonna use as introduction to this topic, but in this case I guess I can use it as kind of like reinforcement. So let's read it here. Alright, I quote: "Right now there are no custom servers, and this situation drastically reduces the game's replayability. The custom servers in Warband provided players with new stuff every server they joined. In Bannerlord there's Captain Mode, Skirmish, Siege and Team Deathmatch. I'm not counting Duel because they didn't bother making a game mode for it. Custom servers were the reason I put so many hours in Warband, and in an indirect way made me promote the game. When players play the game for more hours, more people will want to buy the game, which again may provide a solution for the matchmaking problem." Kind of reinforces the discussion you guys just had, right?
Yeah.
Because not only that, but modding tools, things of that nature, encourages people to build mods of their favourite periods in the game. And so, there's you just have to look on ModDB for the amount of different mods there is for Warband. Just so many of them. And the same thing, you look at Napoleonic Wars, originally started off as a mod, Mount and Musket. So it's frustrating for me because I see the promise that the game provides, and it's been stalled because the community is not being given the tools it needs to support the game and to help the game flourish and succeed.
I think the thing is though, you've got to remember that it's because it's not released yet, it's early access, so if you gave people loads of modding
aspects, there are certain technical aspects that we are not aware of. So it could be that the way that they build the client means that building a private server is not as straightforward, the same as doing modding tools, not as straightforward.
Well, it's not so much that though. It's what I'm saying is if I'm developing a game, I don't want people making a load of mods, because every time I update the game or do a bug fix, their mod's not going to work and they're going to get annoyed. So I can see why they haven't done it yet, but I suppose their problem is it took them 8 years to get to this point. 8 years to make an early access game is a bit ridiculous. And then I feel that I'm worried that they're not going to be able to keep up the momentum, what little there was in the first place, and push it out soon, because I think you're right. As soon as they've fully released the game and they're going to do less updates and things, and people can start modding, that's when it will be really really good, like Warband, like you say. It had the variety, but while it's in early access it won't have that.
It's almost early access has hurt it in a way. They've
almost,
they've released it. They've got the hype for 2 weeks, and there's nothing to carry on the hype.
Yeah,
And then it's going to be much harder to get that hype back when they fully release a game, because there's so many games that stay in early access for years, and the full release isn't really that prominent. Like Daisy took years to release, and then they don't get the hype back. It's just some, but not all of it.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine.
Yeah, do you think that's a mistake on TaleWorlds' part that they released this game because of the pressure from all the fans out there? And
Well, it may have been pressure, but it all may have been financials.
Yeah.
I mean, to be developing a game for 8 years with no real discernible income
Indeed. Takes
means that they may have had no choice but to release early access to get some money in the coffers, and they got quite a bit of money in the coffers. So it may be that it was a situation that was forced on them, that they needed to do it out of financial necessity.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that may have hurt it, but also it meant that the development of the game could still continue.
Could continue, yeah. You said it's still a promising game, right? It still has a lot of, despite its flaws. But there's a lot of people also complaining about again, this is what we discussed earlier on, I think, the communication from TaleWorlds out towards the public, which has been from the start pretty good. There were fixes like every other day or so in the start of the game. But could it be because of COVID-19 or something else? We don't know. But their communication has been, especially regarding multiplayer, very, well, not straightforward. And their fixes not even,
Most of the fixes seem to have been single player.
Indeed.
I wouldn't disagree with that. But the thing is obviously, if you look at it from just a basic game development sort of hat on, single player is so much more vast than multiplayer when you consider the basic configuration and setup. So therefore, most of their attention will be on single player for obvious reasons, with multiplayer languishing a little bit behind.
Plus,
sorry.
Like most people seem to play single player. If you look at
Warband.
No, not Warband. On Bannerlord. On the
Steam charts show there's
Steam charts. That's the one. There's like thousands of people playing the game, but there's probably 100 people online. So that means most of the people playing single player. And I imagine TaleWorlds can see that. They're thinking, we need to make sure that we keep the majority of people happy first.
They for sure are doing that, because even in Warband, I'm pretty sure the majority of players are single player players playing mods and everything of that kind, and not actual multiplayer players. It's just that we're all multiplayer players predominantly. I'm guessing we've all played single player, but our main idea is multiplayer, so that's what we focus on.
Anything you guys further want to add to that?
No,
I think that covers it.
Alrighty, let's talk a little bit more content then. Something we haven't discussed in depth yet is the factions in game, both single player and multiplayer. Do you guys have any favorite like faction, and why is that?
Yeah, Empire Manavlion Infantry is my favourite. Because the Manavlion you can get the longer Manavlion, and it's a ridiculous weapon, and I love it.
That's for the multiplayer.
It is very silly. It is extremely silly.
Is that the long sort of pole arm with the sword on the end?
It's the length
and
of
it's,
a pipe.
Bring
it round.
Yeah, it's quite crazy when it's one-shotting majority of people when I was using it.
Yeah, I mean, I
doesn't make much sense.
also like the barbarians. You know, the ones, the savages with that big long curved sword.
Oh, which ones are they?
I think that's the
Savage.
Britannia one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're fun. They're massive. You just go in swinging with this massive sword and chop people into fish bait. It's just hysterical. I mean, there are sort of little aspects of it I do like, you know, where you see people throwing fire pots on people and rocks down from the top of the buildings, and the fact that if you actually do it right, if you hit somebody just about to throw a fire pot with a javelin, it explodes in their face and kills them. So little touches like that, I do find quite enjoyable. It's the big thing because I predominantly do battles, don't really do skirmish that often because I don't play with friends so much. But for me, the biggest problem I have with the battles, especially the sieges, is the oversaturation of cavalry. I tend to find ruins a lot of battles because you're being attacked from all directions, multiple times, and just like constantly got to keep your head on the swivel. I mean, when they did the call to arms, they banned cavalry, and to me, it was actually a more nuanced siege because they were actually going in with men. They didn't have loads of cavalry and all the rest of it. Now, obviously, cavalry has its place, but you don't hear a lot of cavalry charges in the middle of a castle.
Yeah, it takes away from the enjoyable aspect of that.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, I mean, it may be realistic. I don't know, but it seems not, and also it does take away, like you say, from the enjoyment factor of it when you've constantly got to be watching out for cavalry, and everybody, and maybe the cavalry needs to be made more expensive, or just more difficult to play, or that they're because you can do it with this is another thing, private servers. You can have class limits.
I would agree that I personally think cavalry should be more expensive because, you've effectively got two bodies. You've got a horse and a person. So, in terms of damage, sort of maximum health and damage you can take is really high. And like you say, cavalry is very annoying. They're pretty, I would say someone that's skilled at cavalry will do better than someone that's just skilled at infantry,
100%.
because cavalry is inherently better. So if they made it,
if they made
cavalry classes 20 gold more expensive, that would probably solve it.
But there's a comparison you can make between the two. Like, for example, in Valandia, I think the knight is like 190 and the heavy infantry is 140. Then when you go to native, if you want, so like say a heavy infantry, you can get a full heavy infantry kitted out, 3,000, 4,000 gold. But then for a Swadian knight to get the charger horse, the best horse, it's around 3,000 gold, which is like a whole heavy infantry in cost.
Yeah.
But here it's only 50 extra, which is a third. Well, it's not a third. Yeah, it's a third of the cost of the heavy infantry.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. Because you got to make it with added benefits should come added risk.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it doesn't seem to be that. And as a result, that's the reason why you're getting spammed with loads of cavalry.
Yeah.
So I suppose the other part of it as well, though, is like in Siege, if you were working cohesively with, like, say it was an event and you had like 20 people in a group. If you were 20 people in a group, if cavalry charge you, they're just gonna get killed. So cavalry it lends itself to individuals playing on their own, especially in public server. But
I don't know whether or not you can do it in the game, but I mean, when you're on the cavalry, you can brace your lance against your sort of body to do more damage when you go in for a hit. Now, if you could do something like that where you brace your lance against the ground as an infantryman,
yeah, we've said that before. Me and French and I think Kev as well have spoken about this before, because I was getting annoyed of in skirmish, like couch lance just sneaking up behind you and killing you immediately. And it would be nice, like you say, to have if you've got a pike, if you crouch, it instantly will couch the pike, say, and do exactly the same thing to the horse.
Yeah,
that was the thing in Napoleonic Wars as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would, I feel, make a massive difference, because you could, if there's enough people in a group, you could essentially block off an entrance from a run of horses. Because you would be able to essentially, they would just be diving onto these big spiky things and it will go horribly wrong for them.
But then obviously they'd be vulnerable to archers and infantry, so it would balance out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only against cavalry.
Yeah. But then that means that you would have to adapt your play style, because you can suddenly say, oh, they're making a big push of cavalry down one side. When in that case, we need to come back in as pole arms, and then we need to come back in as infantry. And then you can suddenly say, oh, they're making a big push of cavalry down one side. When in that case, we need to come back in as pole arms, and essentially just do what we need to do a number on these fellows, and essentially push them back and stop them pushing the cavalry down on one particular side, because it's making that particular flank susceptible. So, I mean, all it is really just adaptation of gameplay style to meet the requirement of the actual tactical situation in the match, or in the game that you're playing at that particular time. But I feel that it would add an extra level of ability to fight back against the horses, which at this current moment we don't have. So you basically get a preponderance of like 10 or so horses just galloping through the middle of the castle, just mowing people down left, right, and center, where they don't even know where it's come from. And because they've got the ability to brace their polearm, means they can do 60, 90, something like that damage as they come through, and just take you out in one hit.
And also they tend to have the longer weapons as well. Unless you go for a pike, there is the cavalryman. If he makes a mistake, he just runs past you. If you make a mistake, you die. So it's unbalanced that way. And I suppose little features like this, the way I kind of think of it, fish and chips. It's a bit long-winded, but fish and chips. It's all like the same color. It kind of all tastes the same.
Yeah.
And it's like brown. And what there's a risk of is making the game all brown. It's all the same shade. It's all the same color. But adding little things like that.
Condiments. What you're saying is technical condiments. You basically
you want to add some mushy peas and ketchup in there. You know, you need to add some colour.
Are you having that they're brown? I mean, mine are pretty golden and yellow.
But
so
you know what I mean? Like it's that colour.
Right, yeah.
But what they should try and do is add some spice. Make the game.
I get you. Curry sauce.
Yeah, there are. Yeah. Well, no, curry sauce is brown as well. Anyway,
slightly off topic there, but
but you get the point. Like
Beige Lord, we'll start calling it Beige Lord.
That's. Do you get the point though? Like.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
At the moment, there's a little bit of that because every cavalry unit in every faction has a polearm of some sort, and they all play the same. But if you added a counter to that, it would spice it up a little bit.
There is one that has a bow as well, but I forgot what one that is. Heavy, yeah, that's it.
And heavy Imperial cavalry as well.
The Kuzite and the Sturbia both have horse archers.
Yeah, they seem quite good.
I feel like one of the topics, or one of the things that has come up the most so far in the conversation has been the lack of variety. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well,
there is a lack of variety.
I think there's enough. I think there is variety, but there isn't. They've not encouraged you to take advantage of it because there's a little bit of.
Right.
I don't know if it's imbalance. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean. Like there are certain combinations that are better.
I think that's the case in Warband as well, isn't it?
It's almost like flavour of the week sort of thing,
Yeah, it's the same flavour every week.
It's like we discussed earlier. There are some classes with just the little bit better weapons and gear, and so you don't choose the other ones.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, it's early access, so you're going to kind of have that to a degree anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the point of doing this, I guess, is hopefully to give a bit of feedback to the developers so they can see this and go, oh yeah, maybe we should tweak that. Because it's not like it's a horrendous game with loads of problems. It's pretty good. The core of it's really good. It's just getting the details right.
Yeah, the base game is really good, and we all know there's so many people that have waited for this game, and if the game would be a lot better, I'm sure they would all play again as well.
Yeah.
You just have to change these tiny things to make the game so much better.
It's just these tiny flaws that are making the game not as enjoyable as it is. If those flaws would be fixed, then it would be a lot better.
Then, again, with variety, in Warband, when we go to our native event every week, I wouldn't say there's much variety. when you're limited in Warband to the money you've got, you get the best things pretty much. A whole line looks almost identical with the same things because there's the best and there's the worst. You're never going to get a system where something is perfectly equal to something else. There's always going to be something better.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard for them to ever change that.
I would say there's in Bannerlord, there's actually one really good example I can think of where they got it right in terms of variety, which is the Legionary for Empire, because you've got the choice of having peelers, or you can take a heavy axe. So I know what most people tend to do is take peelers and I can't remember what the other one they take, but peelers and a sword basically. But what I like to do is take heavy armor and a heavy axe, because you don't have the peelers, you don't have a ranged weapon, you don't have a spear, but it's just so tanky. It's quite fun. But both sort of loadouts work quite well in different situations. So if they could make it more like that for most of the classes, then that would make it more interesting.
Yeah. To come back to the factions, Chad, Bethania was your favorite one, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I always saw them when I see them, like their units, they resemble so much of the Rohirrim in Lord of the Rings. I always have to think of that.
Except they have that awful cavalry.
Yeah, that's the only the only bad thing. Their infantry looks a lot like Rohirrim. But let's see, we got Muskie, so Muskie Empire, Chad Bethania, Kev. What's your favorite faction and why?
That is a very good question. As a big fan of playing cavalry, I tend to like Khuzait and Empire. They have some nice cavalry.
What is it that attracts you to the cavalry unit? Because I've seen you play it a lot, despite the fact that you've been playing like infantry and line infantry mostly with the 5th. So, what attracts you in that unit, the cavalry unit?
I like the mobility to get from one point to another pretty fast, and trying to make the surprise attacks. And the choice of using your weapons one or two-handed in changes a lot for your damage. If you have a lot of archer opponents, you want to use your shield, of course. And if you don't have a lot of archers on the enemy team, you can get your damage to maximum effect. As for the infantry and archers, I think they have they work better as a team when you group up a little bit with your team. And as a cavalry, you can, what I said, you can make some surprise attacks, flank a bit, come from behind. And
you like the more mobile tactics, I see.
Exactly.
Yeah. Domi.
Hit and run.
Kev, yeah. Hit and run. Yeah. Domi, your favorite faction unit?
Oh, that's hard to. My favorite unit so far is the Empire with the I forgot what it's called, but the one Muskie was talking about. It's my favorite unit.
The Legion.
No. The one.
The Volunteer, I think it is.
Yeah.
No?
No, Volunteer is
Malevolon. Yeah, Malevolon.
Yes, Malevolon. Valandia is a Volunteer.
Valandia is Volunteer. Yeah.
That's my favorite unit. But I'd say my favorite factions are Sturgia and Valandia, because they quite clearly resemble Nords and Swadia. They're my favorite in the other one.
Yeah.
Or the main two, and yeah. I haven't played it enough to form a solid favourite, but those two I've enjoyed the most.
Yeah, I myself like Sturgia as well for the infantry. They're pretty good. They're like well balanced infantry. They got some nice, good round shields. Everything you need: axe, sword, shield, spear. I like them. Which faction do you guys dislike the most? Is there a faction that you guys like?
Anyone that kills me.
Anyone that kills you.
Which is pretty much all of them. Bastards.
I'm reluctant to say Azurai.
I'm not sure. I haven't formed one that I dislike.
Because we've quite discussed a lot in conversations. It's talked about Azrai as being one of the worst factions of the game.
Mm-hmm. That's
So,
not
yeah.
unfair.
I think it's just because they're not really good at anything. They're just
He
okay.
kept dying.
Like because they don't have very many shields. I don't think, or do they?
They have one
can't
unit, I believe, with
They've got one. Yeah,
narrow
they've got a
shield, yeah.
spearman. Their main infantry is a spearman, which is basically light infantry. The arch is pretty good, but you don't have a long weapon, so against cavalry you're pretty much screwed. Skirmishes are okay, but in a 6v6, you kind of need a group of skirmishes, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, like I say, they're just not particularly good at any one thing, which is the problem, because all the other factions, like Britannia and Sturgia, have really good heavy infantry, and that's what they're good at. And then obviously Kazai's good cavalry, Vlandia's got the crossbows and good heavy infantry, and Empire's got good light infantry and good heavy infantry. So all the other factions have got an interesting unit that's really good, and Azrai doesn't have that.
apart
Yeah,
from the
no
archers, but
argument
yeah.
here.
Domi, Kev.
Yeah, I agree on Muskie about that. The Azrai has the more squishy units as well, which makes them a lot easier to kill, which is fun, of course. But when you play Azrai, we all know you don't get the choice.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, then
frustrating.
you just get overrun so easily, and it feels like you have no chance fighting back if you fight against a faction that have some really strong units compared to the others.
Yeah.
It's a really one-sided battle sometimes.
And they're never fun for anyone. Well, mostly for the person on the opposite side. But yeah, one-sided battles are a death knell to most games, to be honest. Because there's nothing more enjoyable than fighting a battle, even if you lose, and it's a really, really close run thing. But it's still, you want that sort of level of, okay, we lost, but we only just lost, rather than we got completely and utterly battered to snot, and we couldn't fight back.
Exactly, we lost, but I still managed to kill a lot of them,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I personally, I don't know what made them make the Azrai faction so weak, because I don't think, and this is far-reaching, but it's a prequel, right? Bannerlord. It's supposed to be a prequel to Warband, because it takes place, the main story of the single player 200 years before you play Warband, the campaign. So these factions that we are talking about here right now, they are actually the ancestors of the factions that we've all known, like Rodox, Nords.
It's quite clear to tell.
Yeah. So it's quite clear to tell which one is the ancestors, and for Azrai, their ancestors their descendants are the Sultanate, right? And I don't remember them being bad. I think they were actually a pretty decent faction in Warband.
The Sultanate had good heavy infantry. Like the same thing, they didn't have great shields, but they had heavy archers and heavy infantry.
And they had really good cavalry.
They had Cav, their Cav was noticeable.
They were all round, I'd say, worse than Swadia, but they had longbows, or not longbows, they had bows instead of crossbows, which made them stronger as archers.
I don't know, it's a weird decision. Maybe in the future fixes may follow for those units, I don't know. But for me, at least, that faction is definitely one of the worst to play as. And I think one of the worst balanced ones as well. If you compare them to the others are relatively balanced as a whole. They all have some decent units and maybe one or two weak, quote unquote weak, units. While Azrai has just, it's one good unit is their archer maybe, and that's it. So we have Kev, we have Chad, Domi, you had Sturgia and...
Sturgeon and Vlandia is my favourite. I don't have
a favourite.
No,
yeah.
I haven't formed an opinion of one that I hate yet.
we've had a recent patch. This is more about like patches and such, this part. So there's a lot of people that have been asking over the past months for a reporting system, a system where you're able to report players in multiplayer games for their either behavior in chat or their behavior during a specific game, like team killing and such, you know? So with those critiques, they've arrived at TaleWorlds, and I've actually read something disturbingly before that about a TaleWorld developer actually banning someone for 6 days when he said something about the game being really bad. But with the recent patch, I think it's 1.4.3, and the update inbound, there's going to be a report system. So a report system has been introduced for the beta, and that's going to be updated with the next update. So a new report system has been introduced for players to report troublesome users in-game. Logs from each game will be stored and linked for internal review. So you can report players with the click of a button and by writing a short description of the incident. What are your thoughts on this, guys?
That's a good thing. Can only be a good thing.
I think it's open to abuse, though.
Yeah, having a report system is never a bad option, but so far I've only played pretty much with you guys, and I didn't see any game where there was excessive team killing or flaming or swearing, so I don't think it was necessary yet, but maybe people who play a lot of random games did. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I've not been in a game where someone's excessively team killed or been particularly horrible in chat, so I don't really see where the need for this has come from.
And if you talk about abusing the system, like we just almost talked about, if you have a lot of party members teaming up and then one random player on your team, I think it's too easy to group report someone.
Yeah, so like if everyone reports someone and puts the same thing, they could say something that's a bit ambiguous that's not necessarily going to show up in the game logs. What are TaleWorlds going to do? Are they going to ban them? Probably.
That's it. There's no I want to make the comparison to CS:GO, because this game doesn't have what CS:GO has, which may ease in the things for developers and whoever's going to moderate it. Yeah, to after the game is played and you pretty much report someone, a player in CS:GO, it records it. It records the player who's been reported, their movements, whether they are aim hacking or wall hacking or whatever, That's not what this game is gonna have. This game is gonna have to rely on the logs.
Yeah.
And of the written messages. So if you have a group of you against you, is that gonna be a bad sign for you? Maybe not.
And also I think, realistically, if TaleWorlds starts getting loads and loads of reports, and they've got, because they've basically got to read them. Someone's got to spend 10 or 15 minutes looking at game logs and reading the reports and saying and judging whether it's, this person needs to be banned for a few days or whatever. And realistically, what it's going to turn into is they're going to set up a simple rule where X number of reports in X number of times leads to a ban. Which is definitely open to abuse.
But that's always the danger, though, isn't it? Any system that you put in to allow people to report people for misdoing will always be abused. You should just look at the way that YouTube gets abused with its content ID system. I've seen, countless abuse of, admin privileges and all that kind of stuff. So it's always going to be a danger. It's just one of those things that's difficult to counteract.
I suppose it comes back to private servers though, because it's a bit like free market capitalism. If you've got a private server, you can ban whoever you want on there. Yeah. But then whoever's been banned from your server has also got 100 other servers they can play on as well.
Exactly. So you basically end up making your own server irrelevant, and people don't want to play on it. Yeah,
but then equally it means that if I do something silly on Bannerlord and someone reports me, I could get banned for 3 days. I can't play online for 3 days on any game. Whereas, and like I say, it's open to abuse. Whereas, if I go on NW, for example, and I troll on a server and get banned,
It's
it's fine. I can go on another server.
Yeah.
And it also means if it, like you say, if it does get abused, well then nobody's going to play on that server. They'll go on other servers.
I think the question here is, should the banning be up to the people responsible for the specific servers, or does the system actually apply for the whole, like if you get somewhere...
Well, I mean, I set up a system when I was running an entire community that when I brought in admins, there was a thing called a code of conduct, but also that code of conduct also included admins. So in other words, if you were banned off a server by an admin, you could appeal against that ban if you felt it was unjust.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a way also of trying to not control, but just tell people what is acceptable behavior and what is not. And if for whatever reason an admin abuses his privileges, then he would lose those privileges. So, you've got to have accountability. With great power comes great responsibility and all that.
Yeah. There's got to be an appeal system at least.
Yeah.
But like I say, a lot of that stuff is just labour intensive. Like,
that's the problem.
TaleWorlds aren't going to want to spend money employing a dozen people to just...
they're going to want to do it with a flipping... Oh God, what's the word they're looking for? An algorithm.
Yeah, like I say, it will just be X number of reports and X number of time leads to a ban. That's what you would do, because otherwise you're just going to, bankrupt your company paying for people to read through reports from games.
Logs and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So it's whatever they implement is not going to be ideal. I don't think, like I say, I personally don't think they need it. I've not seen... I've got quite a few hours in this game now. I've got nearly 100 hours, most of it online. And I've not wanted to report anyone ever.
Yeah, I've been the same.
I think community servers just takes away pressure from Bannerlord or TaleWorlds themselves to do it. The community servers, they can ban them whoever they wish, and that means that Bannerlord don't have to worry, or TaleWorlds don't have to worry.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think they can afford people to get banned right now, because they don't have enough players in multiplayer.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
So unless they really go ham on the team killing or swearing, flaming, etc., I don't think you should ban or temporarily ban someone for a little bit of bad behavior.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh, it's past Dobby's bedtime.
I see we're getting close to our ending, so I think maybe as a final little bit of a topic, to end a little bit on a more positive note, what do you guys think of the future of Bannerlord, like modding and such? Do you guys think it's gonna be like, is it something you guys look forward to? What do you think is gonna come from it and such?
Modding, yes, because that's the closest we're going to get to Napoleonic Wars in Bannerlord. That's another thing that strikes me as being very strange. Why TaleWorlds has not done any kind of development into Napoleonic Wars, considering how popular a DLC it was. But generally speaking, I think the modding is going to be a massive thing. But I think the biggest thing that will improve the situation will be the private servers, and I think that would be the most beneficial thing to them at the moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the game a lot. I am not awful at it, which was a surprise to me. But I enjoy playing the game. I enjoy playing the game with your friends. I get a very visceral enjoyment out of the combat. I feel like, if I've beaten somebody, I've kind of beaten. Or, if I get beaten, then, it was a good move or whatever, stuff like that. So I find the combat to be very enjoyable. And I think it has a rosy future if we can sort of point it in the right direction and get them to focus on certain aspects that can this was the word I'm thinking of, that can basically reinvigorate the interest in the game.
Fully agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be refreshing the game when people make their own mods and people can play variation of game modes and how the game looks like. I think it will be better for all of us.
I think it's a recurring theme that we've had in this conversation, right? The potential is there in this game. They just need to get those flaws out of the way, and then as soon as you have custom servers, modding, this game's gonna boom.
And I would say, really, if you want to summarise it, the game's a bit like a gourmet meal from a Michelin star restaurant. You know, it's like, it's amazing. The food's amazing, but there's not enough. Like, it needs more. It needs more content.
Bigger portions.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's there is really good, but there just isn't enough of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think the game is really fun and it looks great to me. But yeah, it's just the little changes that will make this game so much better. And adding the workshop, of course, will be huge.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, any final thoughts on what we discussed, guys? I think we've covered a lot of elements in a very...
We've covered most.
Yeah, but there's plenty more to discuss, so which is why I might, if you guys enjoyed this after all, which is why I might host more of these with maybe different people as well.
Steve doesn't want us back already. It's only the first one.
Or additional people, I should say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, nice catch.
Yeah.
So I think we should say, TaleWorlds, please don't ban us for criticising your game.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is only a video pointing out the critique and just
We apologize in advance.
Yeah, we apologize.
Put this at the start, French.
We're not meant to. We're not trying to hurt you, TaleWorlds. Don't worry. We're just trying to help you on your way. No, but yeah, I think we've gone through everything and we're out of time. So yeah, that should conclude it for this session and this video. So I hope you all here had a lot of fun talking with one another about Bannerlord. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to thank you guys for at least being here and sharing your opinion on this game. It's been quite interesting for me at least, to hear different opinions. I hope you guys did as well.
It was good fun, actually.
Yeah, it was a giggle. I enjoyed.
Alrighty.